This is Christopher Talon, host of Creative Ops, a podcast for creative people, by creative people. Speaking of creative people, the show is sponsored by Rivertown Adventures. Check them out. Go to rivertownadventures.com. You're going to find out all about the best canoe and kayak livery service in Michigan. These guys are in downtown Lansing, and they are the go-to place if you want to have fun outdoors in Lansing. Right now, everything is getting super, COVID-era treatment. So everyone's wearing masks. All the equipment gets sanitized and cleaned down after every use. You're in good hands. You want to get out. You want to have fun. You want to be social distancing. You want to do it the safe way. That's the way. Go check them out. rivertownadventures.com and any social media. They're all over the place. The show is also brought to you by Baby Farm Soaps. Baby Farm Soaps out of Berea, Kentucky. You can get their stuff on Facebook. Go to Facebook and look up Baby Farm Soaps. They've got soaps, but they've got chapstick, which I use. They've got sunblock, which I've used on my bald head. And they've got a whole line of other products that I've yet to explore. These guys got a ton of good ratings. I know the owners personally. They're really good people making this stuff. And, it's a win for America if you buy something from them because it's a veteran-owned business as well. So get out there, check out Baby Farm Soaps, check out Rivertown Adventures, and start enjoying life right now. And speaking of enjoying life, my guest was Brandon Scott, phenomenal author. He wrote the book Vodou, which I just read and we talked a lot about. And then his follow-up to that is the sequel, Sleight, which is available now. Go to the show notes, find out where you can get all these things, find out how you can learn more about Brandon Scott. Just a really nice guy. I can't say enough how talented he is as a writer. And I really hope you enjoy the interview that we did the other day. He was able to join me via the miracle of the internet from North Carolina. So enjoy this, enjoy the accent, enjoy the very nice man. Get to know Brandon Scott. All right, Brandon Scott, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so I just got done reading Vodou the other day, and that book blew me away. There's one problem that I have with it, though. Can I tell you?
Yeah, go ahead, tell me.
All right, so out of all the teams in the Major League, you chose the Tigers to be the team getting the shit kicked out of them in a bar on TV. Is there a reason for that?
Because when I'd first started the draft, like the full-on book version of the short story I'd originally written, they had just got rid of Justin Verlander, and I was pretty upset over it. So that was just fueled. I was like, yeah, whatever. So
okay, I didn't know if you.
No, I'm a Tigers fan. I just couldn't let that go. I think I was literally saw that news while I was writing. I was like, I got to make a note of that.
Yeah, because we do the show out of Michigan. I'm a Tigers fan, probably first and foremost, and then I don't know, hockey, football, but yeah, baseball's got a spot for me. So when I saw the Tigers in there, I had to make sure that I made note of that.
Yeah, it didn't help they went to Houston and won a World Series either. So that just.
Yeah. I think most of the Tiger fans felt good for him though. That he put in a lot of time here.
Oh yeah, I love him. I was like, yeah, come on.
But yeah, it is kind of a stab to see your favorite player go somewhere else and be successful. So that's in the book. That's not a big spoiler. And another part that's not a spoiler because you can actually see it right on the cover of the book. You got the, I'm trying to remember, is it an 88 Buick Regal?
84, I think. Yeah.
84. Okay. I also, besides having the Tigers connection, I used to drive a Buick Regal, not that old a one. But I'm curious, like, what was it about that car that you were like, all right, if I'm going to write a supernatural story and a guy's going to have a badass car, could be any car in my imagination, why the Regal?
Okay, well, my grandfather, who I never got to meet actually, but he put his brothers through school, and one of them ended up being like a head of security over at the Detroit plant. So every year he would try to give him a new car, get him a new car every now and again just to try to pay him back. And I think the last car he had before he died was the '84 Regal, was a 4-door. So, and I remember going through some old pictures and I saw it and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And
yeah,
I just kept that around. And something about the front end of that car is pretty slick. So
yeah,
I kept that, and then I embellished it in the book with the 350. Well, I can't say that, but yeah, that's the story behind that. Though that kind of was based off some old pictures I saw, and they said he loved the Regal, and his brother made sure he pretty much had a new one every year. So
yeah. Well, I dig it, man. So far you're 2 for 2 with me. You got the Tigers in there, and you're actually a fan, not a hater. And we got the Regal connection. So I'm going to dive just past the cover. The dedication. This book is dedicated to the 2 nameless hitchhikers who were standing idly by the I-40 on-ramp, on that 2 a.m. drive. Without you, this book never would have existed. Can you kind of tell us the story behind the book?
Yeah, that I was getting off work early from a third shift I was doing, and I was probably like 19 or 20, and I actually started writing the story. Or later, I published it as a short story, the first chapter anyway. But I started fooling around with this when I was like 18 or 19. So anyway, on the way home from work, I got past the interstate and I saw a bunch of blue lights in the distance. I'm like, yeah, 2 a.m. I don't really want to fool with that. So I shifted on to the on-ramp of interstate, and there were just 2 hitchhikers standing out there, 2 a.m. with their thumbs out. And I'm like, what if, I bypassed them. I was like, I'm not going to fool with that either. But I started thinking, what if I would have stopped? What if it had been one person? What if, I had to deal with a second person? What if I was supernatural? What if, I just started playing with what ifs. And that's mostly where stories come from, is just start wrestling around with what ifs one after another. So by the time I got to my exit ramp where, I get off to my house, I already had that story that I was attempting to write more in depth, because I already had a figure in my head. I was like, okay, what if he had ability? What if he looked like this? What if he talked this way? What if, and in the way that Jack talks, that's another thing too, that ties into, I guess, the first chapter. I had a buddy, that he got pushed up here. This is back when I started reworking the story pretty full. I started really diving in because I think I just submitted it like a moron when I was in school. I submitted it to Scribner for some reason. I just mailed it to him. It's back in snail mail days, and I got a letter back with my manuscript back, marked up, from a woman who represents them and all this stuff. But one of the problems with the voicing of the character, she didn't like it. So I met this dude when I was in community college. He got pushed up to my area. I'm in the mountains of North Carolina, so he got pushed up here from Katrina. But he hung out with us long enough to where he started taking on the Hick language, and he blended it with the Cajun. So in my head, that's kind of how Jack started talking, started getting the cadence and the way he structured things. And so basically, by the time I sat down to really attack this again, I had those hitchhikers on the on-ramp there. I had Jack's voice in my head, and it kind of just folds together. So, one thing on top of each other starts stacking. So that's pretty much that. But no, those hitchhikers was just me trying to avoid a bunch of blue lights at the other side of the road down about a quarter mile away. So, but without them, I wouldn't even really have, this book probably would not even happen without seeing them and toying with it.
All right. One thing that, as a writer, I need to do with the book that I'm trying to pitch is my elevator pitch. Do you have a good one for Vodou? Can you summarize this book in 30 seconds or less?
Oh my God. I
know it's hard when you get put on the spot, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't do one when I sit and think about it, let alone get put on the spot.
A dark gothic supernatural suspense thriller steeped in voodoo.
Yeah.
I don't, that's about as I can get.
No,
the blurb is the hardest part.
And trying to get somebody quick, that's the hard part too. But no, I'd go with that. In this story, you've got a guy named Jack who's got a gift or a curse, kind of depending on how you want to look at that, right? Where he basically can't die and he's been charged with doing the Grim Reaper's work, but particularly for the people who were real, just awful people. And, plot goes on from there, but that's a pretty good idea of kind of what we're dealing with in this story. And I'm curious with this guy, because he says things like, in this business, you get a list of names, and you gotta bring those people to hell. Every now and then, you'll run into some bad people that aren't on the list. Go ahead and kill the shit out of them anyway. So It's a character who has a lot of charisma. The reader's very drawn to. The reader wants to root for. But, in the back of their head, they're thinking at the same time, this guy is kind of demonic, kind of sadistic. Were you trying to strike a balance with that, or did that character just kind of come out that way?
Well, it came out that way in the short story, because that's where it just stopped, was in chapter 1. That was the short story I had published in 2016.
Okay.
And I wanted to try to draw him out more into a sympathetic character, but still have you kind of confused about why you want him to succeed.
Yeah.
Because you start dealing with as you've already read the book, but there's a lot more evil going on that's just more than just him.
Oh yeah.
And he's almost like don't even match the scale of what could potentially. But the thing is, this whole thing is an arc, and you meet Jack in the first book. In the second book, you can read the back of, people can read the back of that and not get anything too much away, but you deal with Zadok. And those two stories run parallel.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll share some minor characters, but they're two independent stories. But what I'm doing is, by the time I get to the end of book 3, it'll pull everything together. So book 4, and it depends on how big it gets. If it turns into book 5, will be like an all-star cast, and it's going to have a lot of conflict. You're going to be conflicted on who you're pulling for because of the way I've drawn sympathies out of both characters.
Yeah, for sure.
It's that kind of deal. And it deals, even though it's like supernatural, I think I try to bring in elements of like real world.
Oh yeah.
World issues, like what we deal with every day, how we react to things, and put it in a guy who's just supernatural, all the pieces. So
yeah, and that's the thing I liked about the story too, is that it's definitely got its fantastic parts, but it's not set in a world that is otherwise completely unrealistic and unrecognizable. You said that you had sent this story out on the rounds before, and it didn't end up getting published, but as a short story, it did.
Yeah, I wrote it, and
right.
Of course I had no idea what I was doing at like 19 and 20. So I sent it like an idiot. I just put it in the mail and wrote Scrivener's address on there and mailed it to them.
Yeah.
And I actually got a correspondence back in like 2 weeks, and they said they liked my voice. But then she, her name was Susie. I think her name was Susie. And she was like, well, how old are you? And I told her how old I was. She goes, okay, well, you're probably going to scrub out. But, and it got serious. I mean, I was in college at university, and I was trying to do that and trying to do sports and trying to do everything else. And she was like, I need 3 chapters on my desk by, next Friday. Stuff like that. She's really put me through paces. And I guess in a way I proved her right, because I kind of was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
So, but it came back with a lot of ink on the page. She was like, she hack and slash. She goes, you can tell you don't know what you're doing, but there's something about this I like.
Yeah.
And, but yeah. And then, so I worked with it, put it away for a while, worked with it again. Eventually it got published. It was published by Zombie Pirate Press Publishing, ZPP.
Okay.
And Relationship Advice, ADD was where the first chapter was published.
All right. And you got all that done on your own. You've never had or at least then didn't have an agent. Do you have one now?
No, I don't have one now.
Okay.
My publisher, Devil Dog, they're a small press, so they're not. It was kind of like I don't know how I ended up with them. I think I did end up through my editor. My editor got me in with them because at the time I was about to give up writing, and I sent it to them. I said, figure I could try to get this published or do it on my own, and she liked it a lot, and so she just pitched it to them, and they took it from there and signed me up for a whole series.
Oh, so. Wow.
But the book that I plan on writing after this series is over, I will try to query to some agents.
Yeah, I was curious if you've tried that. I've been doing it not super aggressively, but on and off for the last better part of a year or so. I'll get some responses, but for the most part, it's just a lot of polite no's.
No, No, I never got to that stage. It was like I was about to give up, and I said, well, maybe this book's already been written. I wrote it, and let's see what happens. And she was like, oh, I know someone who would want this. And so that's how I ended up with Devil Dog.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. I've heard some different experiences people have had. Jennifer Susie, author of a book called Demon in Me, she was on the show, and she had tried going through agents and then just started querying. Oh, you know what? I think she might have got like one of those pitch contests on Twitter, something like that, and got a small.
I don't understand that. What is that thing? The Pit Mat or whatever? I don't even understand what that is.
I've never done it, but I've talked to a couple of people who have had successes as far as just getting attention from small presses and agents.
Yeah, I don't. I guess I'm too old school. I'm real old. I start all my drafts in Steno books with a fountain pen. I don't even I have very little internet. I don't do all that stuff. So I'm sitting here with Twitter thinking, okay, so now all I got to do is just put up a tweet and agents will try to talk to. I don't understand how that works.
Yeah.
Usually it was a hard fought process of drafting query letters and getting nervous and waiting months and
waiting your 6 to 8 weeks and then being like, damn it.
Yeah. Now all I got to do is put a tweet and it solves there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Blows my mind.
I think that's cool, man. It's maybe not the way that everybody's going to get published, but the fact that somebody was on your team and kind of pushing you towards somebody to help that happen. Somebody else, I read a blog that the creative one was, they looked up people who were agents, but also offered services as like manuscript doctors, more or less. And then they started sending it out to people that way. And one of them was like, hey, if you fix this, then I'll represent you. And they got an agent that way. But yeah, everybody's got their own story.
That's pretty slick there. That could work.
I know, right? So, maybe that'll work for me, or hopefully somebody that's listening maybe goes that route and it works. Speaking of publishing, you're involved on the publishing side of some things yourself, right? You've got what, two, three side projects on the publishing side?
Two. Crimson Creek Press and Memmer Press.
Yeah, okay.
Memmer handles mostly noir stuff, thrillers, and kind of mysteries. And Crimson is the horror stuff. We've got a book. We got a book series lined up for Jill Girardi. She runs Kandisha Press, and she wrote a book in Malaysia. It's based in Malaysia, and she's from Malaysia, but it called Hantu. I don't know how to say this word. Is it macabre or macabre or macabre? Four people will say it different.
I think it's macabre. I've heard people pronounce the R, but I'm not 100% sure. I say macabre and nobody corrects me.
Hantu Macabre is what she wrote. And it's a pretty good book, but she is right now redrafting it for the American market.
Okay.
And she's doing a whole series based on that. And we signed her up for that. And then Memmer, we have David Green. He's got a book that's going to be coming out next year. So far that's what we got, and we've been talking and entertaining some other people.
I'm really interested in the fact that you've got this stuff going on because, in a world where, like me right now, I'm just trying to find a foot in. It seems like you're being a little bit more proactive and creating your own opportunities as well as for other people. Was that kind of your thought with Crimson Creek and I want to say it right,
Memmer? Yeah, Memmer. It's the Norse god. I think it's Norse god. Brian Scott, my other partner, he's the one who came up with the name. But it's like the Norse god of knowledge, I think is what it is. Mimer, something.
Yeah.
It's Mimir.
Did you originally set these up thinking like, okay, if I can't get my stuff published somewhere else or, my buddy or people that we know, then we'll just do it ourselves?
I won't lie to you. No, I will not publish anything I have through my presses. I know some people do. I'm one of those people that if I'm involved with an anthology, my story will not be in the anthology.
Uh-huh.
If you go back and look at the big boys, the way they did it, all the way back to the 80s, those big horror anthologies in the 80s, the editor didn't have a story in the book.
Right.
And I'm not big on, because to me it feels almost, I'm going to probably get people angry, but it feels almost like cheating in a way. There's no safeguard there. There's no wall saying, hey, you can't why would you publish this book? It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's like if you had a team with you and it's like, hey, I'm going to publish my book through our publishing house. And it's like, well, anybody got a problem with that? And, Glenn raises his hand. It's like, okay, what's your problem, Glenn? Well, this book's not so good. Oh, it's not? Well, you're fired, Glenn. Okay, we're still going forward with this. So
yeah.
I'm real hesitant about stuff like that. People do it, though, and it's fine. I mean, I don't, I've seen some publishers, especially smaller ones, who do anthologies, and the editors will put 2 or 3 of their own stories in there. Yeah. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What was the purpose behind I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm saying too much there. Something too negative.
No. I get it. That makes sense. You don't want to be a hypocrite. You don't want to embarrass yourself, and you don't want to.
If anything, if I can't get a book published, but I feel it's good, and some other readers feel it's good, then it'll come out on my own Amazon page. I won't use the Crimson Banner or any other thing we come up with on it. So,
yeah,
I think that's reserved for other people, and that's one thing that got me going was trying to lift other people. So,
is there something particularly about publishing that world that draws you in, or is it mostly just the fact that like you're creating opportunities for other writers?
I like the idea of creating opportunities for other people. I think most of everybody's had like a negative experience in the publishing world once or twice with some people.
Yeah.
And try to create an atmosphere where people can have a good experience and know there's people that they can rely on and it's not going to try to take advantage of them and stuff like that. That's what we're about. At least that's our mission statement. This one guy I like a lot runs Goulet Pens. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, fountain pens. And he runs a company, a big fortune company now. And he operates on 3 rules. And it's work hard, be honest, be flexible. And that's the way I want to carry myself through our publishing business. Is, if you're honest with people and you're flexible to what they need and you work hard behind the scenes, then everything can be good for everybody.
Yeah. Do you find it gets in the way sometimes when you would rather be working on your own stuff, but then you've got stuff to do with one of the presses?
Honestly, not really. The biggest thing, if you want to know the truth, that robs your time is networking on social media. That of anything else.
Yeah, for
sure. Running the presses is not real because we have a team. It's me, Brian Scott, Sarah Scott, and a guy named Alex Shedd.
Okay.
He's a real sharp kid. We mainly run it behind the scenes. And Scott and his wife are the tech people. They can just make things work and make things happen. And Alex has a big business background, so he knows how to market things and stuff like that. And I'm pretty good with people, so I can get people hooked up and involved and draw interest into them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But no, networking and social media will absolutely bleed you dry of time if you let it, because it's just chasing those dopamine hits,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I go through cycles where I'm just like, you know what? I gotta not get on Instagram for a week. Just put it down. Doesn't matter. Not everything needs to get uploaded right now.
I spend about 90% of my time on social media usually sharing someone else's stuff, like trying to, get attention to other people's work and stuff rather than my own.
Yeah.
Which is probably not good business practice on myself, but,
It's good to put it out, though, because I think, it paints you as a good person when you're helping other people, but it genuinely also just helps other people. And, if you can help somebody get some attention someday, they've got 10,000 fans, and then they can say, hey, you should check this guy back out. It all adds up, I think.
Yeah, it all comes around.
Yeah. I do want to ask you one more question about the book Vodou, and then I want to ask you a little bit about your writing process after that. So the last thing about Vodou, the last thing about Vodou is the magic in the book. How much of it was researched and, you tried to keep pretty true to, stuff that's grounded in real practice, and how much of it did you just kind of go, you know what, for the sake of my fiction, I need this to do this?
Well, I spent probably months, maybe 3 straight months, almost every other day in various different libraries. I'm more Google. I don't rely on the internet a whole lot for things because, the internet's always got truth and realism in it. So I usually go to the books and I had these notebooks full of just Vodou culture, the seven gates. Those are real things.
Okay.
And everybody in these books are populating my books for the most part. least that's steeped in the realm of voodoo, are real deities that are inside.
So Samedi,
the voodoo
Legba, and all those guys.
Yeah, those are real. LaCroix, Babaco, criminal. Those are the 7 gates of voodoo. Those are real. And I just took them for the sake of my fiction and made them into workable, tangible people.
Yeah, but you didn't pull it completely out of your backside. It's all steeped at least in some kind of.
Jack's a fabrication in my mind. Yeah. His little characters, he has his friends, but if it comes to the voodoo itself, those were real, real researchable. You can put all those names into any search engine and you'll get the results. So,
yeah, I don't want to give too much away, man, but the stuff with the jars and all that, I loved that. All right, but I'm not going to give any spoilers away.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked prior to actually talking now that internet can be an issue for you. So logistically, we had to work this out. But I would imagine that being in a rural area where you are, it's got to only help with writing, right? Less distractions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So are you originally from North Carolina, mountain country?
Oh, yeah. Yep. It's where I've been.
Okay.
And then when I went to university, I was even deeper in the mountains up at Western Carolina. So
okay,
that's where I've been.
All right. You've described it as out in the middle of nowhere kind of a place.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of stuff do you do when you're not writing, when you live out in the middle of nowhere?
Well, if you want to do anything fun, you usually have to travel for it. You usually go to we have a town next to mine called Asheville.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
and
they
have the orange
Asheville there, right?
Usually I hit up yeah. I'm about 40 minutes below Asheville.
Okay.
And usually hit up a lot of concerts. Got the Orange Pill up there.
Oh, nice.
Used to be Rolling Stone had as one of the top 10 small venues in America. So usually I do that. I try to see what concerts come through and go hit them up. And usually just hang out with my buddies. We don't really. It's not try to nerd out or anything, but every now and again we meet up on Saturdays and play Smash Up, that game. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No, I don't think so.
Will Wheaton's real big into it. It's just a card game. It's like anything else, but it's something fun to do.
Yeah.
But and now in my older age, I'm kind of just like, chills. I'm not really big into.
If you got the free time, you'd rather
if you're not going to
right?
Asheville. Yeah, well, if you're not going to Asheville, you have to drive all the way to Charlotte to find anything mischief to get into. So
yeah, I've got some family out there, but I haven't seen them. Let's see. The last time I went out there, we went and saw the Charlotte Hornets play the Philadelphia 76ers, and Allen Iverson was a rookie. So that was the last time I was in Charlotte. It's been a minute. It probably looks a little different.
Yeah, it's grown a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into your writing process. When you sit down and you have an idea, I'm not going to ask you where do your ideas come from, because that's kind of a no-no, and we did talk about it a little. But once you've got an idea and you've got an ember, do you have something in your process to kind of draw that out? Like some people will do, like draw character maps, or do like a snowflake method where you say, well, this happens, and then this could happen, and this could happen, and yada yada yada. Yeah. What's your breakdown?
Well, I do the what if thing, but I start as you're writing. Let's say I'm already in the process of doing something, noodling around with the keyboard. You'll get thoughts that have nothing to do with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I am big on sticky notes. I have a cork board in front of my desk that is littered with sticky notes, and I just write down one-liners and little ideas, and then kind of like with Vodou, where I had one thought, and then I saw the hitchhikers, and I thought, well, okay, there's a start, there's a solid start, and then I went home, and I was like, and I had this other thing going on, and I can't really go too depth in that, but I had let's see, John Haley's name's on the back of the book, I think. So his little stuff going on, I had that on a sticky note, and I was like, well, what if I introduced that to that? And then you start linking things together. But I start everything with a fountain pen in steno books, those little Greg ruled steno books, or a legal pad.
Yeah.
So I'll write like large sections of stuff and then start breaking down chapters. But, and then sometimes if the sticky note's not enough, I'll flesh something out and then tuck it away. And that's mostly where I'm like, I remember I wrote this thing down that would work. Let me see where I can find that. And then I'll start linking them together and smashing things together.
Yeah.
But
so then you're not, because I personally am not the kind of person who will plot things out storyboard style and then write it all out. I like to write as I go.
Absolutely not.
Have an idea what I might write, but then have the freedom to change even within that day.
Yeah, I don't do none of that. I don't outline. What I'll do is once I start clicking with a story, and I mean I have to get a couple chapters in to start figuring things out, I will make a bullet list, and I will ask my characters very politely if they mind getting to these bullets. If they don't, that's fine.
Yeah.
But my characters, as much free will as I give them, they don't react well to well plotted out outlines. They just don't.
Right.
They don't do it at all. So and that's how I do it. I totally pants it with just a lot bullet list of things I'd like to see happen. And the best way to write that is when I'm writing a scene or something, I'm in amongst it. I feel like a glorified note taker. That's all.
Yeah.
And usually I know that it's time to shut down the computer when I feel like I'm no longer in the scene, but I'm more looking down at it.
Right.
That's when I know that I'm tired. I just need to, and I always try to end in the midst of things. So I'm constantly thinking about it when I sit back down again.
Yeah.
You don't want to start cold. Starting cold is never good because then you'll just sit there and stare at the cursor for a minute thinking, okay, what now? So if you start if you stop in the middle of the action, you sort of get back into the action immediately when you sit down.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I agree with you 100%. I've got a blog that a couple of people have read and I write about, the writing process, things like that. And I say, first and foremost, always write your first draft by hand. There's scientific reasons for it, and there's just personal reasons for it. But
well, there's a thing that I fully appreciate about the link between the brain, the hand, and the page, and it can't be replicated with a keyboard too much. A keyboard can keep up with your thoughts faster than a pen can.
Yeah.
But a pen forces you to think more. Yeah. Rather than just throwing words at it.
Yeah. You can't just back up and delete it and try something else.
No, but I won't write the entire book by hand. I can't do it. That's too much. I get this little bell goes off in my head, and I'm like, it's time to get on the computer now because this is going to start feeling like homework if if you do this too much, be dictating. But and plus my handwriting's not the best anyway, so your brain's like, okay, enough of this. Yeah. But what I do though, when I do a true first draft, so that's like what they call that, zero draft. I know that's a common term now.
Yeah.
But I have a keyboard. I have a Velocifier Mini. And I have outfitted it with the what's that thing called? The little keyboard. It looks like a typewriter. I can't think of the name right now. The QWERTY Writer S.
Okay.
And I have the keycaps on it because it makes it really fast. For some reason, you type really, really fast on this little thing. But I pull the backspace key off because you don't hit backspace in the first draft.
Right.
That's not your goal. Your goal is to get the story completely fleshed out and just go with it.
Yeah.
That's when it's time to turn on the jets and get going. So I rip out the backspace because it's just, cherry MX key. So I just pop it out. And then I pop out the tab key because that's the biggest no-no you could ever do in the history of the world is just hit the tab key. So those two keys are gone. And after that, it's just as fast as I can get the thing out of my head, the fast I can get the thing off the pages that are in front of me that I've handwritten. And of course, as you're going, when to hack and slash things and skip paragraphs because you don't need them and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but it's mostly because no one reads that first draft anyway, so it doesn't matter. Right. My first drafts are a disaster. And I usually go through about 5 drafts. I know I rewrote with Vodou about 6 times, I think. Uh-huh. But the first one is usually as fast as I can type. That is, I try to hit max words per minute and just go with it.
Yeah, you drive yourself crazy if you don't, because then you'll second guess yourself and you'll, wait, this idea is not good enough. Let me sit and think about it longer.
Yeah, and it's easier to do once you get away from your handwritten draft.
Yeah.
Onto actual page. I always work off hard copy, always. Mm-hmm. So I'll run a copy of that, and then I'll sit down with the red pen and I'll go through it, and that's when the story really starts happening.
Yeah.
And then I'll switch keyboards, and then I'll go to the QWERTY Writer. and I've put different kind of keycaps on it, it kind of slows me down. So now I'm not speed writing. Now I'm having to focus on each word and each sentence. And that's usually how I work. It's a long process, and when you're under contract, you don't have as much time. You know, it's like a band. They have their whole career to make the first album,
right?
In 6 months to write the second. So, but that's my process. It's a long process. Starts with hand and it ends with about 5 drafts later, something usable to turn into the editor so she can fire it back and say you got it all wrong. And those couple pages in Sleight, I asked her, I said, did I not get a sentence right in the first 30 pages here? What's going on?
Oh man, the first time I got something back from an editor, I showed it to my wife and she's like, wow, I thought you said you were good at writing. She marked up a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it
usually
felt
demoralizing.
too.
I'm like, I'll open the file and then close it and not look at it again for about a week. I'm like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I sent her about a 70,000 word, not 70,000 page novel. And I think I found maybe 2 or 3 pages in a row at the most that didn't have a mark.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's what we have them for. They're not to find everything correct.
Oh yeah. I was like,
there'd be no point.
And I said to her, I was like,
but
sorry I gave you such a She's like, no, that was a lot of fun to read. I was, oh, okay. Are you sure?
Yeah. I'm like, you enjoyed this? Because it just doesn't seem like you enjoyed it at all.
Yeah.
But like book 2, like Sleight, was so long that we had to crack it in half. So
really, because Vodou,
I went on a tear, and
Vodou is like a good beach book. You can read that 230 pages, give or take.
Yeah. And the second book, I can't remember how many pages it is. I don't have a physical copy of it yet, but I don't know how many book pages it is. But it was huge. Book 3 is basically the second half of book 2. That's what it's going to be. It's just going to be the continuation of Sleight itself.
Okay. So is that going to still focus more on the oh geez, I know it sounds like Kodak. It's not Kodak. Say the character's name again. Zadok. Yeah, that's not well.
I got that off. I get my names, my characters. I have this book, and it's a blank little writing journal thing, and I go into cemeteries and I go into old ones, and I just write down. I'll work like a quadrant, and I'll write down all first names, and then I'll backtrack out writing all last names. So you don't have no names that are matching off of gravestones in case someone gets weird about that. But all my names come off of gravestones. And Zadok came off of a gravestone that was from 1885. I thought that's a cool name. So
that's awesome. I've never heard anybody do that before.
Well, they're not using it anymore, so I figured.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I guess
let them live again in my book.
That it's fitting for somebody who writes in the horror and the supernatural and the occult to do that rather than the old-fashioned way of just like flipping through the white pages, which is, just a different way of doing that.
I want to do as little thinking as possible when I'm at the keyboard, and that's why, like the town of Clydesboro. And you're going to see Clydesboro again if you ever read anything else from me. Like I've got this series that's about to come out I'm about to self-publish a series called Serum.
Okay.
And it happens entirely in Clydesboro. So Clydesboro basically is a smash of my hometown plus a couple of towns beside of it, just smashed together. And it's so much easier when you're describing a street that you already know rather than trying to dream one up.
Sure.
It's less thinking at the keyboard.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's something to that. That's why 90% of Stephen King's books take place in Castle Rock, Maine, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's just, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. And I got to admit too, I write from a familiar setting. I think that would probably be one of the hardest things to do. I also have a lot of respect for writers who can write from the perspective of the opposite gender and like do it convincingly. What's his name? Andy Weir, the guy that wrote The Martian. Did you ever read his book Artemis?
No, I read The Martian, but I didn't read Artemis.
Artemis was great, and he writes from the perspective of like a 20-something-year-old girl, and that's something that I, as a writer, am trying to work a story right now that does that. But man, I'm just I think I'm more nervous about the reaction to just like, you think this is how girls think?
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah,
have you written from the perspective of a female before?
I tried it a couple of times with some stories that have not seen the light of day.
Yeah.
The closest I got right now is probably in Vodou every time it switches to a couple of those other characters. But
Mm-hmm.
it's rough because, like you said, like you can do whatever you want in your first draft.
Yeah.
But then when you start getting to a point where, okay, now it's time for someone else to see it, that's when you start thinking, okay, did I get this right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is like, I'll tell you, see, Jill's from Malaysia.
Yeah.
And what well, you haven't read Sleight yet. Let's just say I write some stuff about Malaysia in there. And she read the very, very, very first draft of Sleight. And I actually sent her a signed copy of that particular thing, all my notes on it, stuff, just to, I thanked her for. But anyway, after she read it, she wrote me about 20 to 30 pages of everything I got wrong. She's like, you need to fix this stuff now, or you're going to look like a moron to anybody who knows anything. I'm like, okay. Again, it's like, did I get anything right here? I mean,
well, that leads to another good question, though. I'm married, so my wife is the first person that reads anything of mine, and she'll catch things that I go, oh shit. Who's the first set of eyes that you trust with your stuff, or does it kind of vary?
It used to be pretty much it'd be like the girl I was dating at the time or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that never really goes well at all. That's when they're like enamored with you being a writer, but then they're suddenly like, okay, your writing is taking 8 hours of your day.
Yeah.
But probably right now I've got a little circle of people. Donna Laura gets one, and I like her. She was my webmaster for a while for Twitter.
Oh, okay.
And she reads more of the romance stuff, but she has trickled into horror, and I've kind of pulled her into horror. I'm like, hey, read this, and she's like, hey, that's really good.
And if she reads romance, I'm guessing she can read a book in like 4 hours.
Yeah, she's a speed reader. It's insane.
Romance readers go through books so fast. I got to give them that.
Yeah. Jill is a good one, but she's trying to trend it into my number one fan. So I let her read the first drafts, but I kind of watch out for her sledgehammer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then let's see, there's another one. My publisher put me with a lady named Kimberly, and she is rough. She is a former editor. So when that's one of those true beta readings, when you get that comes with notes, that comes with some hack and flash. And that one, she's probably the most fundamental one that I have.
Yeah. It's nice to know that you've got somebody that you can really trust to be like, hey man, this part doesn't work.
Yeah, she's one of those. She's like, she has no real allegiance to me at all. And she's like, this was no good.
Yeah.
Tighten this up, fix this.
Yeah. Because
and then of course my actual editor, Sheila Shedd, and she partners up with DDP, and she freelances, and she's rough too. Like I said, I didn't have pages with anything correct on it, and she was in the notes telling me, why do you have this error here? This is awful, and you need to tighten this up and kill this. So,
yeah. Well, you got to have those people, and I think, the difference between somebody who writes as a hobby and somebody who really feels like that's part of who they really are is you got to be able to seek out and then also accept people that will tell you when you're not the genius that you think you are.
Oh yeah, it's not a game for thin skin at all.
No, it's a game of rejection and fix this. This isn't good enough either. Cut that out. I guess this is moving towards the end of the interview here, but one of the things that I wanted to ask you, for selfish reasons and also for anyone else that's curious, you have a pretty good platform in terms of just your social media presence, having solid interactions with people, and that seems like that turns into book sales, people leaving reviews, things like that. Do you have tips for people that are thinking, how do I kind of push myself into the world via social media and websites and stuff like that?
Well, the first thing to say would probably be just the fundamental stuff. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be fair to people. Well, no, there's no such thing as fair. Be be selfless to people.
Yeah.
Basically. What's that old saying? If you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
But be encouraging to people. And mostly, if you want to get into like the technicals of it, like Twitter, retweeting. So that's when you start bleeding your life into the networking. But you got to do that. You got to, if someone follows you and they're in the industry and they want that mutual follow me back, retweet their pin post. That is like the biggest thing you could do ever. Retweet their pin post, because that's the most important thing on their page.
You're the first person that's given me that advice, but that sounds like, yeah, duh. How do you not know that?
Yeah, and but mostly, actually, when people, now the one thing that you never do, and this is for anybody listening to this, don't ever add someone and then immediately start spamming them with your book. That is the worst thing you could possibly do. And I don't do that. Like sometimes I'll say hi to them. Sometimes I don't say anything at all. If they say hi to me, I'll talk to them. I'll actually, how's your day? How's what's going on? I won't talk about my book. I won't talk about myself other than basic, stuff. Maybe some stuff about writing if they're a fellow writer, but I do not. I try to be as selfless as possible with people, and that goes a long way. That's some serious honey there. That goes a long way when people realize you're not out for a gain, and you're there to be like a legitimate, real person and wholesome. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that people do on social media that I don't know why it drives me crazy. It just does. When somebody will follow you, and then you click follow back, and then you look back the next day, and they don't follow you anymore. And it's like, what?
That's awful. And then your ratio goes all out of whack. And then, Twitter or something thinks you're a bot because you're. And the best thing that Twitter does is that it'll actually show you who's following you or not.
Yeah.
It'll actually tell you. Instagram won't. I have no idea who's following me or not. The best, you have to go through steps to see it. You got to open up your friends list and click this name, then click on their profile, and then click on their something else. They're the people they're following. And if your name's at the top, your name will appear at the top no matter what.
Yeah.
If your name's not there, then they're not following you.
Yeah.
That's multiple steps, and that's that Facebook owns that stuff. That's when you start getting into that.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge Facebook fan.
I think a lot of people consider it a necessary evil. And even
it is.
If I put out a blog post or if I put out a podcast episode, I can see on my website where most of the referrals are coming from, and it's overwhelmingly Facebook. So
yeah,
I kind of do Facebook
that's from a whole
begrudgingly.
horde of people. That's from a whole horde of people who claim they don't like Facebook.
Right. Yeah.
So it's I don't know, 6 of one, half dozen the other.
And then I think anybody who publishes a book, self-published, small press, anywhere, would like to think that their book is award-worthy. Now, I know your book has gotten a little bit of heat as far as awards go, right? You got some nominations or some considerations?
Yeah, I made it to the finals for the Maxi Horror Book of the Year.
Wow.
And then somehow or another, it got picked up for the Bram Stoker's recommendation list, which I didn't do that, so I don't know how it even got noticed by them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that didn't come from me. I was confused when I saw it. I was like, well, that's cool. But
I was going to say, there goes my how'd you manage that question?
Now, I know you can send their jury a book, PDF file of your book, and they'll feed it to their jury.
Okay.
And their jury's comprised of random people because they beg for help every year.
Mm-hmm.
But I shouldn't say beg for help. They ask politely for help. But as far as the recommendation, I don't know how it got on there. I was shocked and surprised. Brian sent me things like, "Hey, dude, you made the list." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." But now just recently, within the last week, I was alerted by my publisher that Vodou went number 1 in occult fiction. It made it to number 4 in supernatural fiction, and I broke the top 100.
Yeah, dude.
So
I saw that post on your Instagram. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I was shocked. I was like, okay, I just launched another book.
Yeah.
First book's doing good, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was interesting to see. I was like, okay, well, hey, I'm number 1 in something with writing. It's cool.
Well, then I'm just going to go ahead and say for you that if there's anything to getting your book just known out there, it's behaving the way that you have already outlined. Just, don't be a douchebag walking around going, "Hey, buy my book. Hey, you want to buy my book?" Treat people kind and just kind of be genuine.
Yeah, I have a lot of people close to me that are aggravated that I don't promote my book enough. Like Catherine McCarthy, she's actually like, "Hey, people need to look at this. Let me post for you a little bit." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine."
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great, man. It's great to see people rallying around something that they believe in too. One thing that I see sometimes, especially on Instagram, is somebody will have like 500 posts and 480 of them are just their book cover, reminding people every day, "My book is still for sale. My book is still for sale. My book is still for sale." And that,
I feel weird doing that. I've had to do it once or twice, or at least make a post about my book. I'm like, "Oh man, this feels weird."
Yeah, I know what
I'd
you
rather
mean.
be posting someone else's book.
Writers are weird people because they're kind of introverts, but then if you want an audience, you got to be able to pimp yourself a little bit.
Yeah. And then you bleed a whole day away of networking.
Right. I can't wait to read Sleight. And then when that third book starts to come out too, then...
Yeah, third book right now, I am over 100 pages into the redraft.
Okay.
And it's going to be about, I'm hoping that it at least crosses 60K. Right now, I think at the split, it was sitting at 45K.
Okay.
Because I had to, that was just half of slots. So, and I've had to rewrite a whole intro beginning of it, and I've added some chapters, beefed up some stuff. I've added a lot of words along the way, but I hope that at least gets to the 60K limit.
Oh.
If not, I'll have to be negotiating for like less, because I think Vodou was only 55K, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So, but that was big enough. People liked it. So
yeah. No, I mean, that's not a small book. That's really a lot of the stuff you see on chronic bestseller guys like John Grisham. Most of his books are right around that.
Yeah. You don't have to write like, million pages. I mean, as much as I love Stephen King, there's been some books I'm like, okay, this could have been shorter.
Yeah. I've been working my way through his series, the with the Man in Black. Why can't I think of the name of it now?
Dark Tower.
Thank you. I've been working my way through those books for the last couple of years, and I'm stuck on I think it's the fourth or the fifth one right now.
The fourth one where he goes back in time, so a whole other story, has nothing to do with anything. Really.
Yes. Where like the whole middle third of the book is like my girlfriend who's.
I love that book, but I don't understand it. It's like, okay, book 3. Now we're on our way. We're okay. Now we're talking about something that happened like decades ago.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Hundreds of years ago when I was.
Yeah, I went through the first couple really fast, and then that one kind of slowed me down.
Yeah, I wasn't overall a fan of that too much. I got to the last book, and I was like, oh. But I will tell you, book 4, I have sitting in the backseat of my car in various steno books, legal pads, and this other journal book I was writing in, all in sections. I keep it in my car in case a house burns down. So I've got that in there. So it's in the works too. I started on it, but then when the edits came back for Sleight, they're like, "We got issues. This is going to have to get chopped in half." I'm like, "Oh no!" So I had to stop everything I'm doing on book 4, which was at the time book 3. So
yeah. So how many hours a day do you put in? Like when you sit down to work, do you have a time?
Yeah, I get what I try to do every day, and it's been tougher here lately just because of enthusiasm level and stuff at work a little bit, and handling fanfare, trying to like network and all that stuff. But usually I work a crummy day job from 6 to 3, and then I'm at the desk by 5:30 or 6, and I write till 11 every night.
Oh wow!
And it used to be seriously clock work. Now that I'm a little bit older, it's like, I think I'm gonna take tonight off, kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe noodle around with something else, or because I have a short story it's supposed to be coming out by J.8 Productions or Industries, or I can't remember what the exact name is, but it was a story that's supposed to have been published by do you ever heard that name, Andrea Dawn?
Say it again?
Huh? Andrea Dawn. You ever heard that name?
I don't think so.
Oh well, she had it was a problem that happened, and that story was originally slotted to be in one of her anthologies.
Okay.
it got pulled. I pulled it myself, or well, everything collapsed around her. So I end up putting that in this one, and it's basically an offshoot of Sleight. So it's a short story based around some of the characters in there.
Oh, that's fun. So
I wrote that in about a week, and that was something to get me. Well, I stayed in the realm of Sleight, but it ended up being something different because it was different characters, same kind of characters, just a different main character, but
like kind of like a parallel story in the same world, kind of a thing.
Same world. It's got a couple of the main characters are in it, but it centers around something else. This is a short story. It's about 8,000 words, but yeah, sometimes you got to sit down and do something different, you know.
Yeah. Well, it was the most bizarre thing ever, but there was a best-selling author who I just, by some strange stroke of luck, had lunch with through somebody else that I know that was working on a writing conference. And he was the first person that really ever told me, like, hey man, don't outline, and try to have an idea where you think the story could go, but don't ever dictate where it should go. Let the story kind of take you there itself. Was there a particular writer or person that maybe wasn't a writer that kind of influenced the way that you approach writing now?
Well, indirectly. Now, like, I've not sat down and met some of these people, but listening to podcasts and stuff, Neil Gaiman, I drew a lot from his process.
Yeah.
And how he viewed, especially the first draft, the way he handled it. And I'm not listening to his masterclass or anything. This was just interviews from a long time ago.
Yeah.
And the way he viewed the first draft and how to handle it, I was like, you know what, that's kind of what I'm doing now, and maybe I need to gear it more to that way and stop stressing over. I was one of the people early on that stressed over the first draft.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of adopted my own thing of just ripping the backspace key off the keyboard, because there's no point. You're not there for that. You're there to tell a story. You're not there to correct anything on that first draft.
Yeah.
So, and so I took bits like that, and of course, you know, everyone read On Writing, which my book was. I bought that brand new. I remember I bought it brand new, the mass paperback, when it came out, and I went home. I read it cover to cover like 2 or 3 times, and I ended up putting those little sticky tags, you know, in the pages, and wrote what chapters were what and all this stuff. And I don't think I've looked at it in a while, because not everything applies. And I think especially when you're a young writer and you're more moldable, you tend to borrow from everybody, but not everything works for everyone.
Right.
And so I don't know. I more or less took some things and then kind of created my own method.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing to do. And that comes with like age and a little bit more mileage under your belt, you know.
Yeah.
Especially, I think better writing comes from years when you've lived life and you've been heartbroken and you've had this happen and that happen. That kind of forms you more better. And then you start more better. That's a good term. But I do strategies like that. Like, I'll rip the backspace off. And then I got yelled at by an editor one time about the tab key. So the tab key come off my keyboard. Yeah. You know, I didn't know that was a functioning word for the longest time, that you could do that. I have one friend I told him about the tab key rule. He said, dude, I've been hitting tab like it's 1988. What are you talking about? So it came off the keyboard, and swapping keyboards and stuff. And that was something I think when Gaiman started changing up his method, where he would go longhand and then he'd go a little bit to the keyboard, but see, unlike him, I'm not writing full drafts in pen. I just couldn't do that. I don't think I could. I go the distance, but I can't write. I think what Stephen King said on Dreamcatcher, he wrote all of Dreamcatcher with pen, like the entire. You know how big that book is? The entire thing. Is
that the one that he said that he wrote the entire thing with a pen and by candlelight?
Yeah, that was his first book after his axe when he got ran over by the van. But yeah, I'm like, I could imagine trying to transcribe that back. I mean, I do a lot of that, and plus redrafts, that's what that is. But I don't know, for some reason, when you take what you've written by hand, a lot of it, like a big, huge chunk of it, it kind of feels like high school again, like doing an English paper or something. And I'm like, you know, and then my handwriting, I'm like, okay, where did I write right there? I don't know what that is. But I do it because I like there's something holy between the brain and the wrist and the pen and the page, and I won't give that up. But my method is do that until you feel uncomfortable. Like, I really need to get this on the computer.
Yeah. You just can't get it out fast enough.
No,
and it's so clear in your mind.
Yeah, it's best to do that. And I found it's best to do it early on, because early on, when you start a book, it's you kind of do a lot of staring and looking and noodling around with the pen on the page, and it's doodling and stuff like that. So, but when you start getting into the crux of the action, when it's time to start getting to the keyboard, because you can't keep up with the writing. But especially when you write a fountain pen, there's nothing like that ink going out on you when you're in the middle of a scene and you're having to fumble with the refill on it and everything. So, but I guess I didn't really answer your question. I say Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman was an influence on me, and I loved his long form to read. To me, is a little wears me out a little bit. His writing style, but his short stories to me are the best things that you can sit around and read.
Yeah,
and I took a lot of studying him. Of course, on writing, but then again, on writing, I kind of, when I got older, I'm like, okay, well, I won't really do that now. And plus the whole thing about the idea notebook, where he said that was where good ideas go to die. I'm like, well, what's the difference between that and my sticky notes that I have all over my corkboard that go into writing books that people seem to be enjoying right now? So I don't know.
That's one of the things that I let go through one ear and out the other. I like to hold on to notebooks until I know there's nothing in it, because I'll look through it and every now and then I go, oh, hey, you know what? That might be a short story. Or, hey, you know what? This character might work in the book I'm writing right now.
Yeah, when I was at work back years and years ago, when I was young, like real young, I would cut like sections out of cardboard right before I'd bail it, like put it in the compactor. And I would, throughout the night when I'm supposed to be working or something, I'd be like scribbling down little scenes and sections and stuff. I've got that stuff stacked everywhere, and that stuff still works. Like, I'll pull some of that out and I'll be like, that's pretty clever right there. Let me rewrite that. Let me rework that. And then it'll fit into a book somewhere or a short story. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. I don't think anybody who writes should just ditch their stuff because, like we've been talking about, just because it doesn't look right, or, you read it and you go, oh man, that feels really high schoolish. Well, then you go and you do a second draft and you make it better.
Yeah, that's the thing about writing. Nothing applies to anyone. It's all very, very, very niche to the individual.
Yeah.
It's what you're comfortable with, and as long as you're able to tell a good story. It's, look at our drafts after editors get them. You don't even have to be able to write well. You just got to be able to tell a story.
Yeah.
So I think it was an editor one time went through the trunk of J.D. Salinger after he died, right? Because he had all these drafts in there. And I think she read a couple of his drafts and said, you know what? He was just a functioning illiterate. So, he could tell a story, but it wasn't very good, well written.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think people do put emphasis on things when it don't really. So a lot of the things that people put emphasis on, it tend to shut writers down, especially young writers. And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in a world where with social media, you want everybody to literally like everything. So to put yourself out there is kind of scary, and to get somebody to say something back, I don't think this dialogue works. You don't want to hear that. That's a kind of a hit to your ego, but it's part of the process, and you
can't have it
better.
You can't have an ego in this. You just can't.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're pulling Stephen King numbers.
Yeah, then you can afford to have an ego.
If you can buy the house on both sides of yours with the money that you made from selling your books, yeah.
It don't affect me.
Yeah. Well, not yet, man. But dude, you're a talented guy, man. I'm really excited that I got on this wagon early on because you are probably one of the two indie writers who I just can't believe aren't on every shelf everywhere. One of the big boy. I don't mean that in a discouraging way, but one of the big boy publishers, one of the big, what are they called? The big five?
The thing is that I'm, younger, I don't know how I would have felt about some things, but older, it's the way the industry works. It's the cards you're dealt, it's like, who wins awards. It's who got to see the most of the book.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's a good old boy club. And I don't, there's so many people who do win big awards whose other books I read that year that were so much better.
Yeah.
And it's just, were you a good boy this year? Well, we'll give you an award for it. If you keep your mouth shut, but you're a big shot. Okay, we'll give you an award for it. I don't know. But I appreciate that because, I mean, I think I try to tell a good story, make it entertaining, and I try not to take it too serious. You'll notice the main character, he don't take himself too serious.
Yeah.
And if people don't like it, then they don't. And if people love it, then that's good. I'll keep turning them out.
Yeah, man. Well, but, keep turning them out. I'll pay for your stories even if they don't get published. You can just write it on a napkin, and I'll give you a couple bucks for it.
All right. And there's another anthology, and I'm going to warn you about this one, okay? I'm going to warn you about this one. There's another anthology coming out. A guy named Ricky Berwick, he puts them out. And it's got some big names. I think Brian Keene's going to be one of the stories in there. And Marie Lanza, she's a really big name. And Catherine McCarthy. But the story going in there, I wrote called A Child's Game. And it's pretty violent. It's probably one of the most violent stories I've written. I actually read it back. I'm like, wow, this is. I mean, and everybody who's read it so far that were in positions to decide things, were they were really blown away. They liked it. They enjoyed it. Yeah. And I'm like, you sure? Because it's this kid, and you don't know what's real and what's not, and it's pretty violent.
Is there any?
And
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'll give you a hint. Ray Garton read it and loved it. if that'll tell you the kind of quality it probably is of that story, it's probably pretty violent and grotesque. So if you ever read any of his work, Live Girls on it, it's pretty dark stuff. And that was probably one of the darkest stories I've written. And I'm almost nervous about being published.
I was going to ask you when you put something out there, do you have a pretty healthy sense of disconnect, or do you wonder, like, man, are people going to think that I'm like this crazy sadistic weirdo?
I have a disconnect, but I'm more worried about. To answer your question, probably a mix of both. Like, I'm okay. I'm not like. Well, people probably don't want to hear that, or probably won't agree with that. But it's kind of, to me, it feels like you're almost apologizing for a story you've written. Mm-hmm. Trigger warning, and I don't mean like grotesque. If you're going to write rape scenes and stuff, you don't need to write that at all. Just keep that garbage out of there.
Yeah.
But if excessive violence, but you're willingly reading a horror story, scary things, and you're reading a horror story, but you want to get upset over it. I don't understand that. Why? I feel like I have to apologize before you even open it up to let you know, hey, this is going to have some scary things in there, and they're going to be violent, and you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
I don't understand that stuff, but I do worry about things sometimes. I'll put out a book, and like I was worried people wouldn't like Sleight at all because it kind of, it's parallel to the first book, but doesn't involve the first book a whole lot. So I figured people would be like, hey, that's not so good.
Yeah.
Well, it got to me after people championed how much they liked the main character of Vodou. Like I got a lot of feedback on it. I'm like,
yeah, Jack's
well, they're really going to hate me for the second book.
So is there? Well, I don't want to spoil it. You don't have to answer if it's a spoiler. I was going to ask you if Jack appears in Sleight at all.
He's talked about loosely.
Okay.
Because the events of Vodou happen at the same time, and so there's some behind the scene things going on where characters are going to start like mentioning the things are happening because there's an underlying plot where things are dependent on each other.
Okay.
Or like there's multiple plans in place or things happening, and it's like, well, the kind of whole thing, the whole story plot of Vodou kind of is an underlining thing in Sleight in some chapters because these characters are kind of concerned about things that are going on there.
Yeah.
But Zadok himself has his own story. That's about him, and like I said, it shares minor character. When we read, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that name.
Yeah.
You'll be like, have you ever watched that YouTube show Pitch Meeting? The guy talks to himself. He's like a screenwriter that pitches it.
I don't think so.
Don't. If you watch those, you'll be on a rabbit hole. 9 hours from now, you'll be watching every one of them. They're amazing. They're short, but they're amazing. But he does that whole thing where it's like he'll mention the name of a character, and the guy will be like, that's the guy from the first movie. Yeah. That kind of thing. So and that's where I wanted people to have that kind of reaction, like, oh, they're talking about that other book. Okay.
Yeah. And I like the idea
how we all
do
like when Stephen King used to do it.
Yeah. And I like the idea that it's happening concurrently too with the two books. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm really excited now that it's kind of you're playing the long con here, where you're kind of telling different stories that are their own stories, but also using those as introductions into the larger scheme. Man,
they'll lock up.
I'm hooked, man. I'll buy all the books right now. You just tell me where to send the money.
Well, book 3 is I have to do a lot of work on it because since people are responding so well to these books and the tone that are in these books, book 3 takes a serious. I'm not going to spoil it, but it does take a very dark turn. So I either have to try to lighten the mood a little, or just say screw it and just throw it out there and see if anybody buys book 4 when it comes out. If I have a fan base left.
Well, you got to challenge yourself. You got to challenge the readers too, man.
Yeah, I'm considering it, thinking about it.
Yeah,
I'm not at that point yet. Though I have to make a decision, so we'll see.
Well,
we will see.
Well, man, I feel like I've wasted enough of your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
No, this is the first one I've ever done. I've usually declined them all. So
well, I'm honored that you didn't decline this one, man. This was fun. Shoot, if I'm ever out in Charlotte seeing my cousin again, I'll send you a text and drive out there and see what's going on in the sticks.
Yeah, see what's going on.
Cool, man. Well, shoot, I hope someday our paths cross at a writers' conference or something.
Well, if we ever get the cons up and running again.
Yeah.
Last year I was at Charlotte at this year, February, around Valentine's Day, I was working a booth at Mad Monster Party. And that was big. They had Robert Englund there and nice. Doug Bradley and Jamie Kennedy. He was there, of course, but they had the whole cast of Scream there, I guess, because they were trying to draw interest for the new Scream movie coming out. Matt Lillard was there, and he was like insane. But usually they have them twice a year, and I try to do them. I won't be doing a booth at the next one because I wasn't certain that COVID wouldn't just destroy that. But they're acting like they're going to have it. I'm definitely going to go. It'll be on my birthday.
Oh, nice.
So that'll be February. The Saturday will be around February 21st. So if you should come down there to that. That's going to be in Charlotte,
dude. When it?
I'm not going to be selling books, but I'm going to be there at least for a day. Saturday. February. You ever get a chance to come down there?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Text me more info about that, or just like a link to it so I can check it out.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to direct people's attention to? Website, how they can order the books?
Well, here's the deal. When I get them in, and I actually got a whole slew of Vodou because the world got canceled this year.
Yeah.
If they hit me up on my social medias, like you got links to that, I guess, and I can send links to you.
Yeah, I can put up links and show notes and everything.
But they can buy Vodou straight from me. It's $13. I sign them and dedicate them to whoever they want me to dedicate them to, and I mail them out. Because all cons got canceled this year. That's just not fun. But
yeah.
Now I don't have physical copies of Sleight yet myself. But when I get them in, I'll have them for sale next.
Okay, so right now that's just the Kindle that's launched, the Kindle ebook version?
No, there's paperbacks. I'm saying I get a contributor copy, and then I have to buy my own copies at how it is. You get that. I have to go through my publisher to get them.
Yeah.
But it's not super cheap that way either. When I get them in, then I'll be launching them for sale.
Cool.
But the contributor copies are mainly, family and friends. They're the ones that want it.
Yeah.
Like you get the book and it's like, hey, I want to see, maybe I could sell these 15 free ones, but mom's like, I want a copy. Your grandmother wants a copy,
Yeah.
Everybody wants it. It's like, okay. Well, I'll tell you what, when I get them in, I'll send you a copy.
Oh, fantastic.
So, you're doing this for me, so.
Well,
I'll send you a signed copy.
Shoot, man, I'm going to have you on every time you have a book out so I can get no, I'm going to pay for these copies anyway. But yeah, absolutely, man. Sign me up for a copy. Vodou was so good. The pacing was perfect. The characters were a lot of fun. I can't wait to see Sleight.
Sleight. Sleight just had its first 5-star review come in this afternoon.
Yeah, I saw that, man. Congratulations. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. I can't imagine that you're going to drop the ball. The Vodou was just so good, man. It really was. Everybody should read Vodou.
Yeah, I told my publisher, I said, now we need to make the movie because people want a movie.
Yeah.
She's like, well, that sounds really good. I'm like, well, you can make that movie.
Hey, man, fingers crossed. So, I see good things for you. So thanks again, Brandon Scott, author of Vodou and Sleight. and future books to come. Check out Brandon Scott on his social media. We'll have all that stuff up in the show notes. Brandon, thank you, man. I really had a lot of fun talking to you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I've never talked this much about myself before.
Well, there you go. It's better than therapy, huh?
Yeah. I feel much better now. Thank you, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good one, man.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Check out the show notes. Figure out where you can get Brandon's stuff. Then head over to ChristopherTalon.com. That's Talon with 2 L's. ChristopherTalon.com. Check out what's going on with the show. Read the blog. And, just waste some time on the internet in a good, wholesome way. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.